T.I.'s son, King. King Harris has been arrested after not appearing in court and some other things connected to his actions.
Trying to coddle him for. Let the man walk off, have some time to himself, sit down, soak it up, and come up with what he needed.
It all began when shocking news hit the public. Something absolutely no one saw coming. King Harris, the young star who had been born into fame and luxury, suddenly found himself standing on the edge of losing everything. Fans, critics, and the entire world watched in disbelief as reports surfaced about his health. Reports that revealed serious complications no one ever expected from someone his age. The rumors were out of control. Some claimed it was a sudden medical crisis, while others whispered about something far more sinister happening behind the scenes. And you won't believe how fast everything started to unravel. King Harris had ruled the spotlight for years, always appearing untouchable, unstoppable, like a force of nature that no one could stand in the way of. But now, even doctors were saying things that no fan ever wanted to hear. Inside the hospital, the silence was almost unbearable. Family members surrounded him, their phones lighting up with unanswered calls, their faces tense with the kind of fear that only comes when you realize you might be witnessing the end of a legend. The once invincible king, the man who seemed destined for greatness forever, was now fighting just to stay alive. People couldn't stop asking questions. How did this happen? How did a superstar who once had the world chanting his name end up in a cold, sterile hospital room surrounded by machines and uncertainty? Fans didn't know how to react. Some refused to believe it, holding on to the idea that this might just be another one of King's infamous attention-grabbing moves. But as more details began to leak, it became impossible to ignore that something was deeply wrong. Believe me, the truth that began to surface wasn't anything like what people imagined. Chaos broke out online. Social media exploded. Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, all of them flooded with theories, wild speculation, and conspiracy talk. Many fans were heartbroken, praying desperately for his recovery, unable to face the thought of losing him so soon. Others, however, reacted differently. Some were even relieved, as though his downfall proved what they'd been saying all along. And then there were those stuck in the middle, unsure what to believe anymore. Insiders started spilling stories. A few claimed that King had been battling health issues for months, but his family had worked hard to keep it hidden. Could this really be the end for King Harris, the king of controversy, the one who never followed anyone's rules? But here's where it gets truly fascinating. While everyone was arguing over what went wrong, almost no one noticed what was really happening. This wasn't just about one young man's health anymore. It was about the survival of an entire empire, one built on drama, fame, and deeply buried family secrets. And as days passed, it became more obvious. King Harris's final days weren't just about him anymore. They were about everyone who had helped shape, push, and profit from his larger-than-life image. Now, it seemed like that very empire was starting to collapse. The whispers kept growing. Doctors were reportedly worried not only about his body, but about the mental and emotional toll that years of fame had taken. Some leaked reports mentioned stress-related organ failure. Others hinted at even darker causes. Rumors of self-medication began spreading. Talk of pills and substances to keep him going through exhausting nights, endless performances, constant parties, and an unforgiving schedule. Was this truly the cost of fame? Or had King trapped himself, driven by his family's expectations, the industry's demands, and his own demons? And the worst part, the Harris family, once always in front of cameras and headlines, had gone completely silent. Not just silent in their grief, but in their response as well. Insiders revealed the family's silence had less to do with mourning and more to do with strategy. They were trying to protect their brand. To them, King wasn't merely their son. He was their golden ticket, their cash cow. His fame, his success, his image, everything they had built revolved around him. And they simply couldn't afford to let it collapse. Their focus, it seemed, wasn't on saving King himself, but on preserving the empire that his name had built. And apparently, King's decline had been quietly swept under the rug for months. The world, however, wasn't going to ignore it. Soon, leaks started to surface, and fans began to ask questions. Why hadn't anyone spoken up earlier? Was this really just a health breakdown? Or was there something much darker going on behind the scenes? People started to recall his public outbursts, his erratic behavior, those infamous Instagram rants that once seemed harmless, but now felt like warnings. Was King Harris truly a victim of relentless pressure from his family and the industry? Or had he simply spiraled out of control on his own? One thing became crystal clear: this was no longer just a medical crisis. It was a full-blown reckoning for the Harris legacy. The pressure to perform, to be perfect, to maintain that flawless image had finally taken its toll. Cracks that had been forming for years were now splitting wide open for the world to see. Fans had no clue just how deep this situation went. This wasn't merely about an illness, it was a story about power, fame, and the dark cost of living under the spotlight. While the family gathered inside the hospital, cameras outside captured every glance, every tear, every whispered word. The internet, desperate for answers, began dissecting every piece of the Harris family's public life. What had they hidden? What truth were they too afraid to admit? Could King have known things no one wanted revealed? Was his health collapse the price of being pushed into a lifestyle that was never his choice? And here's where things got even more twisted. As the family waited in uncertainty, even darker whispers began to circulate. People started suggesting that King wasn't just another celebrity drowning in excess. He was entangled in something much deeper, something powerful enough to shatter the entire Harris dynasty. As the world watched, the once carefully managed image of success and power began to crumble. The Harris family's polished empire was coming apart in front of everyone. While King lay in that hospital bed, clinging to life, the family wasn't fighting to save him. They were fighting to save themselves. The whispers about his health weren't simply about physical decline. No, the truth that was beginning to emerge was far more disturbing. Behind those hospital doors, the real story was finally starting to surface. It became evident that King Harris's downfall didn't begin with his sudden collapse. It had been unfolding quietly for a long time. And trust me, the depth of this story is beyond belief. The family had been concealing something far more serious than just an illness. They'd been hiding the fact that his health had been deteriorating long before the world ever found out. He had been fainting during performances, vanishing for days, showing signs that something was seriously wrong. And yet the family stayed silent. Why? Because the brand mattered more than the boy. Their empire had to stay intact, no matter the cost. You see, King Harris wasn't just a celebrity. He wasn't just a privileged kid with a famous last name. He was a manufactured image, a product, built and maintained to keep the cameras flashing, the headlines running, and the money flowing. In that relentless machine of fame and fortune, his well-being had become an afterthought. And that's the most devastating truth of all. The Harris family, who had built their entire empire on his back, had let him fall apart just to keep the brand alive. What makes this story even more disturbing is that King Harris, despite his fame and success, wasn't really living like a star at all. He was living like a prisoner. His family constantly pushed him beyond his limits, demanding perfection at every single turn. They weren't worried about his mental or physical health, not at all. Their only real concern was one thing: the money, King's lifestyle, the performances, the social media posts, the non-stop parties. It was all part of a carefully managed machine. The moment he couldn't keep up, they saw him as replaceable. And when he finally broke under the pressure, they did what they always did best. They hid it. They covered everything up to protect the family's spotless public image, no matter the cost. But this is where things start to get even more interesting. Some insiders began leaking what was really happening behind the scenes. According to them, King had been struggling with his health for months, maybe even longer, but his family refused to face it. Why? because it didn't match the flawless picture they had painted for the world. The truth was far more chaotic than anyone realized. Doctors weren't just treating King for exhaustion or stress. Not at all. They were reportedly battling something far more severe. Whispers started to circulate about organ failure, substance issues, and dangerous habits that had been ignored for far too long. As more leaks came out, people began asking even deeper questions. Was King Harris a casualty of family and industry pressure? Or had his own reckless choices finally caught up with him? Fans, critics, and even his closest friends were completely divided. Some blamed the suffocating fame machine he'd been trapped in, while others insisted it was his own fault. Too much partying, too many bad decisions. But the wildest part, as the rumors grew louder, more and more fingers started pointing toward the people nearest to him, the very ones who should have been protecting him. The Harris family's silence became deafening. Was it really about concern for King's health, or just an attempt to protect their reputation? Was King truly a victim of fame, or was he simply being used by those around him to keep the money flowing? And here's where the story takes an even darker turn. The deeper it went, the more it appeared that something far bigger was happening behind closed doors. Insiders claimed that King had discovered things powerful enough to destroy the family's legacy. What if his health crisis wasn't the only issue? What if he had begun to uncover the lies beneath the empire his family had built? What if King had been on the verge of exposing something that could have shattered the Harris name forever? There were whispers that he had been planning to cut ties completely, to walk away from the family's control and bring everything to light. The shady deals, the hidden investors, the secret financial schemes. Suddenly, the rumors about King's knowledge of his family's darkest secrets started to sound a lot more believable. Maybe, just maybe, King Harris wasn't simply a reckless kid. Maybe he was a trapped young man living inside an empire that sought to control not only him, but everything he knew. And then came the most twisted revelation of all. Reports started surfacing about a private recording, a recording allegedly made by King in the days before his collapse. Some sources claimed he had been talking about betrayal, manipulation, and how the very people closest to him had turned against him. A recording made just days before King's collapse allegedly captured him talking about the ultimate betrayal by the very people closest to him. In it, King reportedly confessed that he felt manipulated, set up, and exploited for his family's personal gain. If that recording ever became public, it would serve as the final blow, the nail in the coffin for the Harris family's carefully crafted image. As investigations into the family's finances and business dealings began to pick up speed, legal analysts warned that things were about to turn ugly. Federal probes, lawsuits, and even potential criminal charges were reportedly on the horizon. The Harris dynasty, once seen as untouchable, now stood on the brink of collapse, facing the kind of consequences that could erase everything they had ever built. One misstep, and the entire empire could come crashing down. But here's where it gets even more shocking. As the family scrambled to contain the chaos, more and more leaks started to emerge. Fans began connecting the dots. From King's medical records and reported substance struggles to the early warning signs everyone had ignored. And then came the most chilling discovery of all. Documents suggested that the Harris family had been warned weeks before King's collapse that his health was in serious danger. Doctors allegedly told them that if he didn't make drastic changes, his body might not survive. Yet, the warnings went unheeded. The family chose silence and self-preservation over action, protecting their empire instead of their son. The internet erupted in fury. Social media feeds flooded with outrage. Hashtags demanding justice for King, people calling out the Harris family's negligence. How could they have let this happen? How could they turn away from the signs? The myth of King Harris, the flawless, untouchable superstar, had been destroyed. In its place stood a family desperate to cling to their legacy as the truth spilled out for the world to see. The damage was irreversible. The leaks had revealed everything. The Harris family, once seen as the ultimate symbol of fame, fortune, and success, now faced a public reckoning unlike anything they'd ever imagined. And as even more details surfaced, one undeniable truth came into focus. King Harris's death wasn't merely a tragic loss. It marked the beginning of the end for an empire built on deceit, secrecy, and betrayal. The family now stood at a dangerous crossroads. One path led toward honesty, accountability, and maybe even redemption. The other promised endless cover-ups, brutal legal battles, and a permanently tarnished legacy. But just when it seemed the scandal had reached its peak, new whispers began circulating. Anonymous insiders claimed that investigators were zeroing in on the family's financial records, uncovering possible tax evasion, fraudulent contracts, and even money laundering operations. Everything the Harris family had fought to build was now hanging by a thread, at risk of being completely destroyed. The final chapter of King Harris's story was far from written. In fact, it seemed like it was only just beginning. The internet was watching closely, fans were waiting for answers, and the truth, no matter how much the family tried to contain it, was already out there. King Harris's tragic final moments had unleashed a chain reaction that could not be undone. And one thing was certain: the world would never view the Harris family the same way again.